I believe we did have one resolution that came in from Mike Lane that Kathy sent us a little bit ago. It's I don't have it right in front of me, but it's this. So I can't read the title, but it's essentially the same. It is the same as the resolution we're going to be considering later in the meeting, directing the county attorney to prepare a local law changing the term of office for Tompkins County legislators elected in November 2021 to I'm guessing, a 1-year term with a return to 4-year terms. So this was, it's essentially, it's exactly the same, other than instead of 2-year term, it's a 1-year term. So can I have, is anybody on the committee want to move to add this to our agenda? Henry, I see you, Mike. Okay, is there a second to add it to the agenda?
No. Talk to me.
Mike, dear, I already talked to Leslyn. This is the process that I'm going through.
I was going to say, I wasn't asking for it to be added to your agenda. I simply wanted it to distributed to the committee as to see what an alternate would look like.
Okay, well, we did get it, and then you sent it and Kathy sent it again. So.
Well, I didn't send it. Jonathan Woods sent it.
Okay, all right, we won't be adding it to the agenda then.
I mean, it's totally up to you, but I'm not trying to tell you what to do with your committee. I'm only trying to say I wanted an alternate so people could look at it. If someone wants to add it, that's up to them.
Okay. I guess, Henry, do you want to add it?
No.
Okay. All right.
Amanda?
Yeah.
I seem to be having trouble hearing you, so I've turned off my video. I apologize. I think we just should make sure we talk about the 1-year option when we get to it. Also, in changes to the agenda, maybe we want to move this up because I know several of the people Mike included, that's why they're here. They want to hear this part of our meeting.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, and I do see now that you had your hand up, but I didn't have my panel up. So thank you. And if other folks can't hear me, sometimes my internet connection is a little unstable, so hopefully I won't be cutting out. But I hear you, Rich. There's some other people with scheduling things coming and going, so I'm a little reluctant to move this up to the front based on the Board of Elections and Mike Sigler has to have a meeting separately at some time. So.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. And just
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Hi, Mike. Are you on the phone?
Oh, good. Okay. I am. So good. We're all set then.
Okay, great. All right. So I don't see anyone from the public. So we're going to move on from that. Can I get someone move the minutes of May 7th?
I'll move them.
Henry. Mike Sigler seconds.
Yep.
Any comments or questions about the minutes? All right, roll call. Dan Klein.
Yes.
And Henry Grandison.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
And I'm yes, so that passes. Thank you. All right, I see Darby is here to talk about the foreclosure recommendations. Hi, Darby.
Hi, how are you guys?
Good. How are you today?
Good. Back to summer weather. Enjoying that.
Right. I assume. Yeah, go ahead. Jump in.
Yeah. So every year when the foreclosure list comes out, the planning department reviews it for potential properties that have either natural, historic, cultural resources, or could be at risk if the county took title to it before the auction. So we review the list and make some recommendations. And I included in the packet the land policy, the land transaction policy, so that you can take a look at that. And so a couple properties that came up this year were pretty good candidates for being withheld from the foreclosure auction. Oh, hey, Rick. And so I can run through them quickly. I think we went over the list with Jason a couple weeks ago, and he gave the thumbs up for that. So that's kind of why we're a little delayed getting time with him. And so the first one is in Freeville. It straddles the Fall Creek running right through the village. And it happens to be adjacent to 2 other parcels that have come up over the years as part of the foreclosure process. And the village does have ownership of those 2 adjacent parcels. And when I reached out to the village mayor and they talked about it at a trustee meeting, they were all in favor of the village taking, having ownership of that and figuring out what the payment for that would be. So I recommend withholding that so that we can work that process out. Any questions on that one? I can just ask as we go. Oh, we just lost Amanda. Where'd she go? Oh, there she is.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got kicked off, so that was weird. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll move through because there's 2 more that are for the withholding from the auction. The next one is on Stonehouse Road, and it has been on the list in previous years, and the owners were able to figure out a payment plan for paying off the taxes. But unfortunately, the last resident of the property has passed away in February, and so they are still working out the details of the estate, and the will of the owners does specify the Finger Lakes Land Trust as the beneficiary of the property. So we'd like to give some time for the estate to get itself worked out, and for the land trust to then take possession of the property. And there's an old, like 1820s-ish about the Stonehouse of Stonehouse Road is on the parcel, and they will likely sell that off, subdivide that off and sell it. But then the other 2 sides, the north and the east side, are surrounded by Robert Treeman Park. And so the ultimate goal is that would be turned over to or sold to state parks. But land trust will be taking care of that process. And then the third parcel is on Beach Road, and it's across the inlet from the Mill Park right in Newfield. And we just saw this as an opportunity that they may want to expand the park for their residents. And I talked to the town of Newfield about it, and they at first were very interested. Now they're a little reluctant because of potential costs, but I still think it's at least worth holding out this year to see if they can figure out what their interest level may be. So that's those recommendations. And then there's a couple tricky ones came up last year with some stormwater parcels, both in Danby and in Newfield. The Danby one got situated last year with the town of Danby now owns those properties, so that was taken care of. But then 2 in Newfield, we weren't able to make any progress with getting those into other hands. But the town of Newfield is actively working on this. They've been meeting with some neighbors, and I think their ultimate goal was probably to have some kind of homeowners association take over how they maintain and operate those stormwater basins. But I'll just say again, it's not something that you really want to see go through the foreclosure process because there is a maintenance issue here that these have not been maintained. And so it'd be good to let that play out over the course of the next year and see where it goes. That's my list. Do you have any questions?
Great. Yeah. Questions from folks? Comments, concerns? I see Dan and then Rick. Or Rick, do you want to add to what Darby was saying?
I do. I usually don't make objection to any individual property being pulled. I just like to make a general objection at the start of these proceedings each year, because as tax collector, I always look to see that we retain our tax base and that we actually increase our tax base as much as possible. And each year we bring a list of properties forward, and I always make this generic objection against reducing the tax roll. And I try to keep these properties on the tax rolls without being specific towards any property. I do understand the concerns why we do this. I am in favor most of the times when the towns and villages can acquire a piece of property that's going to go towards good use, a good public use. And I think those are worthy of consideration. Some of the other properties we've looked at in the past, we just take off the tax rolls, and a lot of times they're not used or pursued to any benefit of the general public, other than them being set aside in conservation areas or parks or things like that. So I'm just trying to mind the store as the finance director and the tax collector for the county. I always support keeping our tax base as high as possible so that we can keep a low tax rate for all our taxpayers in general.
All right, thank you. I have Dan and Rich, and we are gonna take a moment of silence in 2 minutes. So, but Dan, go ahead.
I have two questions. One is, Darby, I think I heard you say the town of Newfield is maybe balking at the purchase price. Is that what you said?
They were balking at just having any expenses, and I don't even know what the purchase price would be for the Beach Road parcel. I hadn't gone down that road. I talked to Supervisor Mike I think earlier this week, and he said at the town board meeting last week they talked about it and were not in support of paying any money out. But I don't know. I never gave them this is how much it would cost you number. So I guess I'll remain hopeful that something can be worked out, or they might not be interested in adding that to the mill park, in which case that's completely fine. I think it just is an opportunity to see what could happen.
Well, I see in the information you gave us that it's assessed at $8,000. Doesn't seem like, that seems like a very reachable goal, even if there was like private fundraising involved or something like that.
Right.
Second question, Amanda, should I wait or?
Yeah, let's just let's have a moment of silence right now. So if everybody could just be quiet for a moment in honor of George Floyd and the incidents that are going on right now. Right, thank you. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you. Second question is about those stormwater parcels. When this happened last year, it was the first time that many of us had heard about this kind of thing. It just so happened that it happened in two different towns in 1 year, Newfield and Danby, and apparently it hasn't happened since. But I'm interested, we talked a little bit about this last year, I'm interested in exploring a way that towns can be proactive about this kind of thing so to prevent this from happening in the future. I think it was going to be referred to, was it the Water Resources Council or somebody to discuss, to see if there's maybe a generic regulation that towns could adopt or something like that that could be done townwide basis, countywide. So I just wanted to put that back on the radar, okay?
Yeah, and so I went and talked to it's actually, there's a stormwater coalition of all the municipalities that are regulated MS4 communities. And I actually talked to them a couple times and then did a few email follow-up. And I think every town has something on the books that says that something has to happen with the maintenance and the operation and maintenance of stormwater facilities, but whether or not that's enforced is the separate issue. So, my anecdotal story is that when I worked in Ulysses, they had never done any maintenance plans that then get filed with the county clerks, and so then it was hard to track who's responsible. So, we made sure as part of the policy, even though it's already in the law, that it actually happened. And so I think in Danby's case, they had already set up a stormwater drainage district. I'm not sure exactly what they called it, but they had set up the language to make that happen, but they had never moved forward with setting up the district. I mean, everything was in place. So that's why they were able to pretty seamlessly take over those parcels. In Newfield, they have a local law that says certain things about what happens with stormwater facilities, but it's a matter of enforcing those laws. And so I think just in my conversations, most of the municipalities felt like they have this covered in their laws, and just being aware that, yeah, developers can walk away and not pay their taxes, and then who's responsible? And even in the Newfield case, the deeds or one of the agreements says something about the adjacent landowner will be responsible for the stormwater facilities, which is kind of a big ask of a property owner.
So, I mean, it seems like the property owners skirted those laws that were in place by simply stopping to pay the taxes. Therefore, they don't own the parcel. Therefore, they're not subject to the law. So clearly we need something different. I would like to see maybe the idea of an escrow law, that anybody developing a stormwater parcel has to set up an escrow account for the maintenance, or, I don't know, for that gets surrendered if the property is transferred or foreclosed on, or something like that, or any other mechanisms. But it's too easy. Clearly, these developers saw something we didn't see, which was if they just walk away, they owe zero, and that I'm looking for a way to solve that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Dan. I had Rich next.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, I'd raise my hand just to counterbalance Rick with a generic approval of pulling certain properties off the roll. Anyway, but I'd comment on Dan's proposal. I agree that from a governmental standpoint, this has been a problem. I used to be the town attorney in the town of Lansing, so I saw it out there. But I'm not sure this is something where the county wants to get involved, because this is really local land use. The towns and villages and the city should be looking out for the other taxing jurisdictions, but I think they're better placed because they do subdivision approval to require the escrow or some sort of homeowners association to take over.
Yeah, but it's become our problem. It's become a county problem.
Well, yeah,
We own it now. We literally own it.
I agree. On the other hand, this is one of these things where I think the towns and villages, we should go to them and make sure that they're doing it rather than us doing it, because they're going to be aware of each project. We'd have to get involved where we really aren't at all.
All right. Okay. Rick?
Amanda, one correction there is that we don't own these properties that we're suggesting with these stormwater issues. That's why it's written in the memo from last year and this year that we choose to either withhold from auction or withhold from foreclosure. And there's a differentiation in what that means in each of those cases. When we withhold from auction, that means we will foreclose on the property but not auction it. We only do that on safe properties that we don't want to have any liabilities and things of that nature. And that happens from time to time. As in these stormwater properties, if we have an agreement like we did last year with the town of Danby, we don't mind foreclosing on it, taking ownership, passing title on to the new owner, the town of Danby. If there's a question on whether there's going to be an agreement, not only will we withhold from auction, but we'll also withhold from foreclosure, which means the county doesn't even take title to the property. So I was just correcting that statement that, well, now the county owns it and it's the county's problem. That's not the case.
Isn't it the case though, Rick, that we actually pay the taxes on that parcel? Aren't we making the towns and school district whole on those parcels?
Well, yes. Uh-huh.
That it is our problem. We are literally paying for it.
In that case, yes, we would be on the hook for those back taxes. But if we would go forward and auction the properties, that's how, under 98% of all auction property, that's how we get paid back, is going through the auction process. If we went through a situation to where we were going to come into an agreement with a town, like some of these other properties we talked about, we would always strongly recommend that upon selling it, a piece of property to town, that we would at least get the amount of back taxes that's owed on it, which is usually not that much. It could be as small as $700, $800.
All right, let's go to Henry and go ahead.
Sure. On the Fall Stonehouse Road property, is there a way we can get paid? I mean, if we give to the Finger Lakes Trust, and if they sell the underlying property, can we get the taxes back?
Yes.
They're prepared to pay the taxes. They just need to get the estate settled, but the land trust will pay the back taxes if that, when that comes around.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Any other questions about this? We don't have a resolution or anything. This is just discussion. So anything else? Kathy?
And Darby, do we need a motion by the committee for this?
I think
forget how this works, Rick.
we do. The action requested is to approve exactly what's written in this memo. So yes, we do need action for you to approve this course of action.
Okay.
Because the legislature never gets to formally act on this. The way that it's written is that the committee at your level has the power to add or subtract to this memo of what Darby's suggestion is. But based on this one meeting today with this committee, you have the approval rights, which instructs staff what to do going forward. So yeah, it would be appropriate to approve with a motion.
Okay, so Dan
Yes, I would like to move that we approve the recommendations in the memo.
Is there a second? Henry seconds. Any other discussion about this topic? All right, let's have a vote. Dan?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And Mike Sigler, are you there?
He's muted.
Yes.
Great, and I'm yes. So thank you very much, Darby and Rick, and for putting in the effort on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, great. So moving on, Steve DeWitt is here on the phone. Thank you for being here, Steve. And we have a resolution, and we also were going to get an update. So maybe let's do the resolution first. Let me find it. This is the creation of position election worker at Board of Elections. So can I have somebody move that? And then we can talk about it. Rich moves it. Dan seconds it. Steve, can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, up until this year, all of our poll workers were paid out of program expense because invariably they earned under $600 in the year. But this year, when we were back in March, when we were looking at 3 elections this year, it was very evident that we were going to have 70, 80, 100 poll workers that would be working 3 elections, and they would be earning over $600. And there were several meetings, or at least one meeting, maybe 2, between people from personnel, finance, and IT to discuss how we go about this. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and we're down to 2 elections, but we still have early voting, which creates the need for some additional, for some of these inspectors to work additionally and go over that $600 threshold. And the county, the position of the county is that once they break the $600 threshold, they're technically employees. And so what we worked out with HR is that we would create this one position called election worker, which we would be able to make appointments into that one position, as many as we would need to, get through the year through early voting. Or actually, there's unexpected stuff. We've got an incredible amount of absentee ballots that we're now processing, and applications. And so there's a lot of extra work, and we want to have some extra worker, use some of the poll workers to to accomplish some of these tasks. But in the end, to keep them under 1,800, because once you hit 1,800, the county has to start pulling out FICA and all the other things.
Okay, all right, that definitely helps me understand. Questions from the committee? Anybody? Henry and then Rich?
Second. Yeah, Steve, what are the hours that people had to work before they reach 600? What's the hour maximum to hit 1,800?
Well, generally, our poll workers, up until this past year when you had early voting began, you essentially only needed your poll workers for election days, and primary days were, a 10-hour day, and general election days were a 16-hour day. They generally worked those 2 days and maybe attended a training session. Now we have early voting and we have a 16-hour primary election day, and that's keeping below that $600 threshold for all of our poll workers is impossible. We need to have some relief there, and this is what we. And the other thing that's also driving this is going to be, I think, an additional training cost for the sexual harassment training to comply with the law that was passed in 2018, and so I don't know if that answers your question, but
Well, you're asking for $9,000. I mean, how are you going to? How do you know that you won't go over that?
Well, we don't, because we don't have a believe me, yeah, we don't. I think we figure we'd start with that and see where we get, after the primary election, and then see what gets thrown at us for the general.
But you also had early voting last year, though, too, right?
Yeah, we do have clerk positions which can cover some of that early voting, but we still have a couple of inspectors that work early voting. The clerks work it, but they have a little bit more technical ability, and so we have a clerk position which we used there too. But this is just to kind of fill out the election workers. And we also are using some of these election workers, only a couple at this point, but to process applications for absentee ballots right now for this primary. There's just an overload of work in our office right now, and so that's what we've been trying to use some of these poll workers to help out in that aspect too.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Rich?
Yeah, I support this. I understand why the request is being made. Please help us have elections, Steve.
We're doing our best.
Okay.
All right. Other questions? I think we already moved it, right, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and vote. Rich?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Mike Sigler? If you're there?
Muted.
Yes.
Great, and I'm
Yes.
yes. Yes, thank you, Mike. And I'm yes, so that passes. Great, thanks. So, Steve, folks always have lots of questions about what's going on at the Board of Elections and updates on the primary. Something I know folks are interested in is about polling places. So I don't know if you want to just talk for a few minutes and give any updates, and then folks, if you have specific questions, we could ask.
With regards to polling places, we started out the season with 39 polling places. Immediately, Kendall said that they just couldn't have us in there, even though they wanted us in there. That was back in March. We had contracts from every other polling place, but then we decided we would, at the end of April, we decided to revisit, and we contacted every polling place. And from that contact, College Circles and St. Luke determined that they did not want us there because they were closed at the time. And we were going along, and then just this past week, the county health department made a recommendation that we not have a polling place in Ellis Hollow Apartments community center there in the apartment building, or at Titus Towers, because they have at-risk residents living there. So we've been trying to find places where we can move the voters or give them a polling place for all of these sites. And, we're limited because we have to locate sites within the same municipality as the one we're trying to move, we're moving out of. Kendall is pretty easy. We put it down at the First Congregational Church of Ithaca. The people at St. Luke, we're putting them at the Town of Ithaca Town Hall. And College Circles, we identified a site, the South Hill Business Park, that met the criteria for a polling place, and got a contract with them to use their place for a polling place. And then after the two places this past weekend, we with Titus, we had a choice of moving them into GIAC or into the Town of Ithaca Town Hall, and took a look at voter history and a number of eligible voters, and it made more sense to put the Titus people into the Town of Ithaca Town Hall. And then for the Ellis Hollow, it was a choice between BOCES and the South Hill Business Park, and looking at the number of voters we were expecting, the size of the room, and all that, South Hill Business Park, looked a lot better. Legislator Black wanted to see if she could find a site, and and she spent a couple of days trying to make contacts with people at Cornell and Coddington Road Community Center and some places, and weren't able to finalize anything. But we have to get notices out to these voters, so we're now at the point where the voters at Ellis Hollow will vote over at the South Hill Business Park. I guess the good news there is almost 30% of the eligible voters that voted Ellis Hollow have already applied for an absentee ballot. But if people want to wait until election day to vote, they are going to have to travel. But there are 9 days of early voting, and absentee voting is open to all of these voters also.
Right. And how, forgive me if I'm already asking questions that people have already asked, but how is it going to work with, keeping space between booths and dealing with pens and all that kind of stuff in the polling places during voting?
Well, that's a good question. We are in all of our polling places, we will have hand sanitizer for the voters to use as soon as they enter the building. We'll have one of our poll workers at the door, just making sure that we don't get the room with too many people. Once the voter uses the hand sanitizer, we give them a pair of disposable mitts to put on each hand. They're not mitts like big thick mittens. They're just mitts with a thumb and for all your fingers. They're very lightweight plastic, kind of like almost the same texture as what you use if you were to go to a bakery and they'd give you these wax paper things to get your baked good out of. They're that consistency, but they're a mitt, so that they hopefully will be able to handle the pens and their ballot and not contaminate. We also are requiring the voter to wear a mask. If they don't have a mask, we will have some disposable masks available for them. We have plenty of, and then once they're through voting, we ask them to dispose of their gloves and to use the hand sanitizer again immediately before they leave the building. We will have plenty of disinfectant wipes on hand for the poll workers to keep surfaces clean, and we'll have nitrile gloves available for the poll workers to use if they choose, and we're taking as much of precaution as we can. We'll space our voting booths 6 feet apart, which does limit it. I think, we'll see how things go, but the fact that a lot of people are taking advantage of the absentee voting is going to make it, somewhat easier to maintain social distancing if people choose to vote in person.
Right.
Plus, we have 60 hours of early voting over 9 days, which is additional time that people, if they want to vote in person, can take advantage of.
Right. Great. Henry, you have a question?
Yes. Steve, do you have face shields for the election workers?
We don't. We have a few. We don't have them for every worker. There's, we've pointed this all out to all of our election workers. Told them what we're planning on doing, and so far only a couple have asked for the face shield, and we've got about 10 on order.
Okay, and early voting, is it going to take place at 2 locations as last year?
Yep, absolutely. 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays, and on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays it'll be from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 12 noon to 8 p.m.
And just repeat what those places are. Is that Ithaca Town Hall, and also is that emergency response?
Well, not emergency response. A crash fire rescue conference room in the Airport Administration Building. I think that's what the building is.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
great. And I was just wondering, in terms of getting all this information out to voters, I know, and especially with folks whose polling places are changed, is there a mailing going out? How are people gonna get this information?
Yeah, we're required by law that whenever we change a polling place, after we send out the mail check card, which we've already done, that we need to notify every eligible voter that their polling place has changed. So we're arranging right now with mailboxes to get that mailing out. It will probably go out, I'm guessing, either the end of this week or very early next week. And of course, I don't know, probably a lot of you know that every eligible voter was mailed a application for an absentee ballot. So that doesn't help with their polling place being changed, but that does get
Right.
the word out.
Yeah.
There are other options available.
Okay, great. Dan?
Steve, I saw West Danby on a list. Was that accurate? That West Danby polling place is being changed?
Yes, that was partly because they're one of three polling places that wanted us to go in and do a deep clean after the election, and we just figured that so far like 25 voters have already of the 105 that are eligible have applied for an absentee ballot, and we just felt that opening up the polling place for 15 hours for probably I'm guessing if you look at the voter history, it's probably only another 25 voters to come out and vote. We just felt that it made more sense especially with the options of early voting and with the option of absentee ballot, that just made more sense to have those voters vote at the Danby Fire Station for this election.
Great. So that's official now. I can say that to people.
Yes.
Okay.
And they'll all be getting a mailing shortly.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for taking time. I know you're very busy, so thanks a lot.
All right. You're welcome.
All right. Enjoy the afternoon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Hi, Lisa.
Hey there, Amanda. Hi, everybody.
Hi. Thanks for jumping on. I know you have also a million other things going on right now. So we have another policy, reasonable accommodations, and I guess, I don't know, should we move it, or I guess we can move it and then we'll talk about it. Rich? Anybody want a second? Dan? And go ahead, Lisa, tell us all about it.
Okay. So just the one policy this month, but it's 29 pages long. So we figured that was more than enough to chew on.
Thank you.
So it's, you can see, in order to make it consistent with all of the applicable laws, human rights law, ADA, civil rights law, Domestic Violence Prevention Act, all of which call for reasonable accommodation. It does cover a number of different groups. So it covers individuals requesting accommodations because of a disability, a pregnancy-related condition, religious beliefs or practices, and domestic violence concerns. It also applies to our current employees and potential employees in the way of job applicants. So let's see, there's a rather comprehensive definition section, the policy itself, and then procedures which go through how to request a reasonable accommodation, the interactive process that employees and their supervisors would go through in discussing reasonable accommodations. And, it covers both supervisor and employee responsibilities. And probably most importantly, what takes up a lot of space in this policy are the forms, the request forms. We do have a right to request medical documentation if that is applicable and would be useful. Those requests would go through HR to the medical providers. And domestic violence reasonable accommodation request form, any other additional documentation, and then if the request is denied, a denial letter as another attachment. So it's pretty thorough. It covers the bases, and it kind of provides a structure for both employees and supervisors as well as HR for handling these requests, which I want to say we've been doing across the organization, but on a more informal basis. So this really has been needed to formalize the structure. I also want to say this has been cut down from an even longer policy, and it's been reviewed by our Labor Council, as well as, the organization. Jonathan has taken a good long look at it as well. So we've tried to streamline it as much as possible.
Great. Well, it was riveting reading. What questions do folks have? Rich.
I'm just curious, how has it been managed before having this policy in place? Because I see it's new.
Yeah, we haven't had a policy. So, department heads have been having these dialogues with employees, and a lot of them have been around ergonomics, those sorts of requests, and getting those types of equipment. I see Jonathan. Did you want to say something to this, Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, it actually, Rich, has been a major problem in the past is we really haven't had a clear form and way in which an employee requests an accommodation. And it comes up all the time. Has the employee claimed an accommodation? Have they not? Have they claimed a disability? Have they not? And we really haven't had a clear policy and a clear form. So this is important.
Great. Other questions? Concerns? I think maybe Annie and WDIC had looked at it, or is that incorrect? No. Okay.
It was sent to across the organization. I gave Anne and Leslin the heads up that it was coming.
Okay. Okay. Really? No other questions, comments? I guess you did an amazing job.
Just make them all 30 pages long, and then they'll prove.
Exactly. All right. Well, then let's go ahead and vote on this one. Dan.
Yes.
Henry.
Yes.
Rich.
Yes.
And Mike, if you're there. Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Great, thank you. And I'm yes. So we're good to go. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with all the rest of your stuff today.
You too.
All right. Now we're going to talk about what everybody loves to talk about again. So we do have a resolution. Directing the county attorney to prepare a local law changing the term of office for Tompkins County legislators elected in November 2021 to a 2-year term with a return to 4-year terms thereafter. And as we said at the beginning, Mike Lane had sent along an alternate version, which is a 1-year term with a return to 4-year terms after. And I'm sure you all recall that at our last GEO meeting, we had a good long discussion. Let's have somebody go ahead and move this, and then we can keep discussing. Rich moves. Dan seconds. Thank you. So what do folks, oh, Kathy.
Yes, I saw an email from Robert Lynch after the meeting started. He had submitted comments for privilege of the floor for the committee about this resolution. I forwarded it to committee members.
Okay.
So.
I did just read his email, and I can address those concerns during the discussion, or if you want to handle it some other way, Amanda.
No, that's fine, Dan, because I'm not going to be able to read his email, and then, so do you want to go first, Dan?
Okay, well, let's see. So let me start by summarizing his email, which says 2 things. He asked us to delay making this decision. But what he doesn't acknowledge in the email, so he may not be aware, is that if we are going to make a change in the schedule of the next election, we need to do it by, I think we decided the end of July, so that it could get on the referendum for November. So I just want to say that was the first thing he asked us to delay, but he doesn't seem to know that we can't delay very long. We could delay a few weeks, really, is about it. The other point he makes is that he thinks it's important that the census data is in line with the districts as quickly as possible. So instead of waiting 2 years, we should only do it in 1 year. And I think some people are going to point out that we don't know at this point with the census data, followed by a redistricting process, if 1 year would be long enough. So he may not know that part either. I think that fairly summarizes what he has to say.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Nobody's raising their hand, so let's just move on. Dan, go ahead.
I wanted to suggest a couple of amendments, and they're not substantive, but that doesn't mean people won't object. Okay, so first of all, line 12 is a small one, comma after 2021. It just helps clarify, make it clear what's being said there. Line 16. I would propose that we say after submit petitions, comma, as required by New York State election law, comma, and then continue as is. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's important, I think, if the public is following this at all, that they understand that we are required by election law to submit petitions at a certain date. That's really what's driving this, not the election itself, the petition timing.
Dan, could you read those changes again? I assume
Sure.
they're friendly, but I didn't catch them because I was looking for the part.
Okay, so the first one was just on line 12 after 2021, a comma. Second one is line 16. After it says submit petitions, I would add comma, as required by New York State election law, comma.
Well in advance.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
I would consider those friendly.
Thanks, but I have more. The next one is line 19. And it's the same idea. Instead of saying redistricting before the November 2021 election, I would propose we say redistricting before the 2021 petition process begins. Because again, it's not the election that's the problem, it's the petition time.
Agree.
Okay, line 21, I'd add a comma after legislators. It just makes it quite a bit clearer. And then the final one is line 26. At the end of the sentence, I would say, so I'll read part of the end of the sentence. It currently says, with a return to four-year terms thereafter, I would add comma, subject to approval by a public referendum in November 2020. There's nowhere else in the resolution that mentions the referendum. So I just think, again, for somebody from the outside reading this, it makes sure they understand that that's part of the process.
Just on that note, Rich had also, a couple weeks ago, had sent another clause, which unfortunately I don't have that in front of me. Do you, that addressed exactly what you just said, Dan?
Okay.
But that didn't get added in.
So I should say I did throw that additional clause into the one-year proposal that Mike Lane had submitted. So if you have
Okay.
that, it should be in there.
Okay. So, does somebody have that though, that they could read? Because
Yes.
I think we would have to add that as an amendment to this.
Right, I'm just saying I
Okay.
I included it in there because I got Rich's language.
Okay, cool.
I have that. Do you want me to read that?
Yes, please.
So in that one, it's in the last whereas, and it says, I'll read the whole thing. Whereas changing the term of office for legislators would require passage of a local law, with such local law subject to a referendum to be placed on the ballot in the coming November 2020 election. Now therefore be resolved.
I'm very friendly to that. I think it's beautiful language.
You wrote that.
Thank you, Rich. So all these amendments are friendly. Does anyone have other comments on any of these things that Dan has said? All right, so Kathy, you got all of that?
I think so.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Martha. You want to go ahead and speak? Nobody else has their hand up.
Hi, yeah, this was on the agenda for 2:50, so I thought I was coming in early. Would you mind just summarizing quickly what the changes are?
Well, okay, yeah, Dan just had a couple of basic commas and adding in a notation that says this is required by election law. It's not just a whim. And that it's about the petition time, not the election time. So
Okay,
basically,
good.
and then that last clause that Rich had written out previously was noting that it has to go on the ballot and is subject to the voters.
All right, and this is, what is the term length that you're considering right now?
This is the 1 year term.
Okay.
I mean, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
it's 2 years.
No, I'm sorry. It's the 2 year term. Sorry.
Thanks very much.
Yep. All right, Mike Lane, you want to go ahead?
Oh, thank you, Amanda. Yeah, when I asked Jonathan to craft the possible alternate resolution, it wasn't my idea to force it onto your agenda. I simply wanted folks to realize that there could be an alternate. I apologize to the committee not being able to have been at the last meeting for the discussion and have been able to say some things that I would have liked to said. And that's why I kind of wanted them out there. You know, this is the fourth redistricting that I've either been familiar with or been a part of. I was mayor of Dryden after the 80 census and went to the public meetings and all of that with respect to the redistricting. And then of course we did the same with the 90 census and the 2000, the 2010 census. I guess I'm kind of passionate about redistricting and the process of voting, of having as many voters as possible. So I appreciate your willingness to listen to my thoughts about this. I think we ought to have the shortest time possible in which we are out of sync with the new census figures for our districts. I think I've been very proud of the fact that we have done that. in the past. And going back to the 2000 census, in 2001, we really went into overdrive to get it done before the election so that we would have the new districts. There's been some concern here that we couldn't get it done in the year. I don't think that's the case. I sort of see a schedule. Maybe I can send this out later. I haven't put it down on paper yet, but I would see a schedule for 2021. In the spring, the legislature, and probably this committee that you're on, advertising for people interested in serving on the commission. They could probably advertise for 30 days if they started in March. And then they could begin the interviews, and say in May or June, the actual commission could be appointed. We have been told by census that we can expect at the latest the block data by July 31st. So if we have the commission up and running and we have the data come to us on July 31st, they can begin work right away. We heard from Greg Potter, who's been part of this for at least 3 times and has done a lot of the grunt work to get it to happen, particularly with the programs that he's been using, the websites and other things, that it would take about 4 months to do the process, looking at last time it was done. So if they started August 1, they're going to be done, let's say at the end of November. We could then adopt their recommended plan, hopefully, in December. And that would still give us probably a month of January, before, if there needed to be a little more time somewhere. At the end of, at the end of February, the petitioning is going to start. So we have to have it in place before that starts. But remember, the commission will be having public hearings about their recommendations. Sometimes they have several different scenarios to have the public comment on. When they have them set up on easels and other things at the locations when that is done. So I think the 1-year period is very doable. The different question, of course, is do we want to go to a gubernatorial year? I'm, for one, am an advocate of that, because I sent around to you the fact that we get so many more voters who come out in a gubernatorial year than we get in the off-year elections. So I would hope that you would consider this resolution that you have, changing it from 2 years to the 1-year period, similar to the alternate that I suggested. I would, if the committee doesn't feel it wants to do that, I will bring it to the full legislature, because I think it's so important that we discuss this there. Thank you, Amanda.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike, for expounding on all those important things. Rich, you're next, and then Annie.
I'm just lowering my hand. Mike, thanks for coming to the meeting. And I've struggled with this, and I was originally thinking, yeah, the 1-year term makes sense. At this point, I favor the 2-year term because of the uncertainty that we would be depending on the federal government to get its job done. And I just don't know that they're going to do it in a timely manner or effectively. Whether they're going to give the redistricting commission the information that they need. I would much rather we have 1 year of out of sync with the numbers than 2. But we would have the worst of all possible worlds if we had a second election and didn't have the information and didn't get redistricting done in time for petitioning. So for that reason, I favor the 2-year term. I'm also nervous about switching away from the off-year cycles, in that we would probably get more turnout. I'm not sure it would be people that were more knowledgeable about the county elections. I think it would just be people that were voting in the governor's or the presidential election that happened to see us on ballot as well. Looking at 2017 to 2019, the numbers that that were in that email exchange, it does appear there's slightly higher turnout in the years where the legislators are on the ballot, going from 30% to 38% of the registered voters. So we may have a pull effect in improving the turnout in the town and village races. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Great, thank you, Rich. Annie, and then Henry.
Thank you. I think this could all be solved. I have a great idea if we do 10-year terms.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, another idea I had. Well, I was also, thinking about, the 5-year terms, but I don't know if anybody does 5-year terms. That seems like a long time. But I just wanted to, thanks for letting me put my 2 cents in here. I also, as some folks have said, I would like to have a 1-year, that we, a 1-year term, as far as trying to get the correct information for our districts, but I'm not sure that is going to happen. And possibly another issue for that is then we'd be off sync with the local towns. And so for me, it's not, I like to see a lot of voters out. And I think part of, what our task is, and at least for me, is I like to see as many people engaged. And so that, to me, that means getting people registered to vote and then getting them out to vote. And if we're out there at times where other people aren't out there as much, that's an extra time to be out there door to door or however we're doing it, and to get more people out there. I think another thing that it's when we're out there is to talk about the long and short-term issues that face our county, the state, the nation, and talk to them about the offices that are up for re-election or election, and then hear the issues they're concerned about. The next is you talk to them about yourself. So to have it in a gubernatorial, to set it when it was a gubernatorial or a presidential race, my guess is that people are mostly going to want to talk about that. So yeah, we were going to have more people out, but I think we're going to have difficulty with them focusing on that. And I don't want to leave the towns in a lurch.
All right, thank you. Annie, Henry?
Yes. Last committee meeting, I actually supported the 2 5-year terms, but that went down in flames. I also think that having a 1-year term just puts an extra onus on the Board of Elections. It also gets on 2022, then 2026, and 2030. So what do we do after 2030 when the data does not come in until later? We have to then do it again. And I don't think that makes sense to leave a problem at the doorstep of the future legislatures. I mean, the same thing if we do a 2-year term. So I'm actually supporting no change. But, I know that it'll be 4 years before we change again and everything else. But I just assume that, people can deal with it. People can just know that we're not in sync. And we're never going to be in sync as long as we have 4-year terms. So that's all I have to say.
Great, thank you, Henry. I'm just going to jump in and then Martha. I think, we've talked about this a lot. I think that there's obviously good and bads and pros and cons in all the various scenarios. I guess I just don't see, I think we're in a very precarious time in our country right now. And if we think things are going to be running normally in the federal government or even in our society, I just think that it's not a wise thing to try to rush through this. I think we need to give it time, and considering that, you know, folks want to have our redistricting commission work with the city's redistricting commission. There's no promise that, you know, for the second half of 2021 that they're going to be up and running and ready to go. I just think more time makes the most sense. And I think Henry's totally right that, you know, in 2030, it's pretty much whatever we do, it's going to be the same thing, unless we went to 5-year terms. Whoever's on the legislature at that point is going to have to look at this again, and whether it's off by 1 year then, or, you know, 2, they're going to have to be rethinking this. So there's not really like a super ideal answer. My preference at this point would just be the more time, the better to try to figure it out. Martha, go ahead.
I agree, Amanda, that there's nothing perfect. So when I did the calendar here on my own pad, and I see if we have a 1-year term and then 4, then we have a 2030 election. If we have a 2-year term and then 4, we have 2031. So kind of, all right, we have a bit of a problem either way there. So as Dooley used to say, that doesn't seem dispositive to me. That doesn't settle the question to me. I am really pleased if we're talking about either a 1-year term or a 2-year term followed by 4s, rather than doing nothing, because I think that leaving the next election as a 4-year term is really way too long to be out of sync and to have an even number legislature. So my personal preference would be to go to 2 years and then 4, but I'd be fine with 1 year and then 4 as well.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm not sure Mike Sigler is back. He had to step away for a few minutes, but if you're there, Mike, did you want to chime in at all?
Sure. I mean, I agree with what Annie was saying earlier. I like the way the campaigns kind of for county legislator meld with the town. What I was saying to Amanda earlier was that, you know, with my town people, with my town supervisor, I talk to him probably every couple of days. I go to the town meetings and I give a report, and part of that is because Pat Pryor used to do that. And I thought that was, you know, really great that she did that. And I find a lot of value to that relationship. Whereas with my federal, even if it was, say, on a congressional year, you know, Tom Reed and I, we talk maybe once a month before COVID, and now it's obviously more often, but you know, my relationship with him is not as close as my relationship with the townspeople. And that's what I think elections should be about, is issues. And I find that a lot of the issues do come out when the way we have it right now is, you know, I've been in elections where I lost by 7 votes and where I've won by 33 votes, and the issues mattered. And that's what I like in an election. So I like the way that they align. So for me, the 2-year and then moving on to the 4-year, I mean, frankly, I would be okay with doing nothing, but since that's not the general consensus, you know, 2 years and then going back to 4 years, I think works pretty well. So that's where I'm at with it.
Great, thank you. I guess just to clarify, if this committee does not, if we don't pass this 2-year resolution, that means that we aren't sending anything to the legislature. So then it would be incumbent upon Mike Lane, as he's already said, or some other legislator to bring forward a resolution, a different resolution to the full legislature. So if your preference is to not change our terms, you would effectively be doing that by voting no to this resolution. Does that make sense to folks, I think? Okay, Shauna?
Yep.
Hi, thanks, Amanda, and thanks to everyone for the conversation. It's been good to hear everyone's opinions and the logic behind them. I personally think that it's important for us to vote with the towns and the villages. I do think that it brings more people and it helps people to participate in democracy whenever you have more candidates on the ballot. And I think that's really important. With that said, we talk about balancing different areas and different districts. The reality is that if you have 6,000 constituents and you have a single development that opens up and starts, with 1,000 people, for example, Maplewood, that opened up in my district 4 days after I was elected, then that impacts your district. And, the misrepresentation would happen for 4 years without being sorted through. So, I think the one thing that I keep going back to is that people are always going to be represented, whether it's myself representing them, whether it's Amanda, whether it's Dan. I corner all three of those legislators, or all two of those legislators. Like us as a group of legislators, we're always going to represent people. People will always have a person to call with their interests or concerns. And so I think it's important that people also realize that the representation is still there, and it's just a matter of perhaps receiving a different legislator under a redistricting. So thank you for allowing me to speak, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you. Does anybody else have anything? Jonathan, can I ask you just to say, so if we do pass this resolution right now, it will go to the full legislature, and then can you remind folks of what the process is after that?
Sure. Obviously, well, let's start. If you don't pass the resolution, nothing goes to the legislature. But like we discussed before, I surely expect someone, and Mike said he'd do that today, to bring something as a member filed resolution. And that would follow the same process as any member filed resolution. And whether it's something coming out of this committee or that, it would then go to the full legislature to vote on whether the resolution, which is to direct me to prepare a local law for 1-2 years, or if it doesn't pass, then obviously nothing. Once I would do that, once directed to do that, I would do that. That local law would then be voted on, but of course you'd have to have a public hearing first on that local law. Then it would come, obviously go through committee. But it would be voted on first, the resolution to have a public hearing, then the resolution to adopt the local law. If that passes, it then goes on the ballot. And if it passes, then it becomes, with a referendum, then it becomes a change. So, there's still several steps in the process.
Great. Thank you for that recap. Mike Lane?
As long as Jonathan is commenting, Jonathan, could you comment on if we did nothing, our liability for a suit for failure to redistrict?
Yeah, I don't believe that there's any obligation on the county to do anything. I really do believe it's optional, because I'm not aware of any successful suit, or even any unsuccessful one, for requiring a legislature, a municipality, or anybody to change their election terms in order to be more compliant. If they hadn't, all the cases are, if you had your election in its normal course and didn't.
Jonathan, that really wasn't my question.
I don't know of any obligation to.
My question is, if we continue to stay in districts that are out of whack with the population, are we liable for an election suit based on that?
What I'm saying is I think not. I have no precedent for that.
Well, what happened? Well, we got sued after.
Oh, yeah, but that's for redistricting that was not in compliance and having an election that is not in compliance, not for simply filling out terms that are already there. What we're talking about now is filling out terms that already exist. I don't think that there could be I mean, I know of no case, and I find it really hard to imagine that there would be a case where you could be out of compliance for finishing a term that's already there.
Right, and just to clarify, like, whatever we decide here, the redistricting commission will still happen. So whether in 2021 or at the beginning of 2022, if those legislators are going to be there for 2 years or 4 years, the redistricting process will still be happening, and either there will be another election in 23 or 25, if I have that correct. So this is separate. So I think what Jonathan's saying is that legislators would already be in those positions before the redistricting process is complete, and they can continue those as normal, right? Or what you're kind of
Right. I don't see any real liability. I mean, because what we're talking about now is changing the terms. I've never known any court to hold that you have to change the terms in order to comply with, or to be in compliance or closer to the census. That's completely different than having a new election after it comes out, and you haven't redistricted. You know, I mean, I can say there's no precedent for that, and I think it really unlikely for that to be successful, because, like I said, you'd have to change your terms, and I've never known any court to require a legislature to change its terms.
Great, thank you. Henry?
Amanda, I know Dominic did that short thing about redistricting and also the census. Have we heard any responses back from the public?
I haven't. I don't think anything has come through Kathy's office. I mean, I heard more response, and I think you did too, Henry, from constituents when we sent out the op-ed.
Right.
I mean, I think people are just, this is like not on their radar right now. There's much more important things going on. So, has anyone else heard from constituents, or Dan?
Yeah, well, I discussed it at each of the town board meetings that I attend, Caroline and Danby, and the majority of town board members weighed in, and all of them liked the idea that the county election would continue to align with the town election. I have not heard from any residents, non-elected officials.
Thank you. Martha?
Yes, I had a similar conversation with town of Dryden folks. It was brief, but that was the consensus there too. And I know, I think I saw, maybe it was Facebook or somewhere, I know I saw a couple of people saying, you know, do a 1-year term. I can look for that. And I didn't have time to go back and, well, say, well, there's a little problem with the census. We're not sure we'd have time, but the instinct definitely was for a 1-year term.
Yeah, and Henry and I got a couple of responses as well that were, I think people were, you know, some people said, yeah, do a change of terms so it's a little bit shorter. I think there was 1 or 2 that were like, it doesn't really matter to me. Okay, anything else on this before we vote? All right, so this is to direct the county attorney to prepare a local law for a 2-year term with a return to 4-year terms thereafter. Dan Klein.
Yes.
Henry Grandison.
No.
Rich John.
Yes.
Mike Stigler.
Yes.
And
Yes.
thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike.
No
And
problem.
I'm a yes. So that passes 4-1, and we will take this up again on June 16th. Great. Thank you, everybody, for that discussion. And let's see. Look at that. We're exactly on time for our next item. So I don't really have a report, just that you should have gotten an email from, or you did get an email from Jay Franklin about what's going on in the assessment department. If you have questions, you could certainly reach out to him. And also that I just really appreciate the hard work that all our staff are putting in right now. It's kind of a challenging time on many levels, and yet government has to go on, and we have all these things, important things that we've had to talk about today. So I appreciate all our staff, and I appreciate all you legislators who continue to work and care about all these things. Jason was not able to be here, but Amy's here if she's listening and there's anything to add. We would appreciate hearing from you.
Hi, everyone. Actually not anything to add. I think we've kind of hit it all off. We discussed everything that's going on here Tuesday evening, and I don't think I have anything at this time.
Great. Any questions for Amy at the moment? All right. Thank you, Amy. That was easy.
Yeah, thank you all.
Jonathan, any other report you want to give us?
No, just let people know. I mean, as of June 1, we're back in the office, meaning physically someone's there every day, but not for all 8 hours. But you know, that's a change. Court is still by Skype. And there's coverage, at least in the office, every day. But other than that, no report.
All right. Any other questions for Jonathan right now? All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Rick?
Yes, I had a brief update on the hotel room tax issue we faced last month. And the unofficial direction Jason and I gleaned from our last meeting together was when we told you that there were certain hotels that hadn't paid their the room tax, and that we really didn't know what to do. So at that point in time, we hadn't chosen to do anything. So we hadn't applied any interest or penalties. We gathered from our conversation last month that the committee would rather have us enforce it than not enforce it. And so we went back, and Lisa Schott and myself, Jason and Jonathan sat down and had a conversation about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, and we discussed our overall strategy for room tax and how to collect. And so we decided that we would go back after any of those hotels who had not paid. If you remember, they fell into two groups. There were those that had submitted their statement on what they owed but sent no check, and that there was another group of those who didn't send in their return nor a check. And so we went after both groups, and thank you, Jonathan, for preparing the legal letters that went out. In those letters, we addressed them to the two separate groups a little bit differently. We said that for the group that had sent in their returns, we said, thank you for your return. We noticed that you didn't send payment. We had determined that having not received the full payment, that we would give them an extension until June 10th, which was from that point in time about a half a month. And at that point, if we received their payment, that they would not have to pay any interest or penalties that had accrued until that time. And so we sent that out on May 26th. We gave them the June 10th. We should know in about a week and a half if we gathered any positive response from that. The other group of people, similar, went out. It was worded pretty much the same way, except that we started off by saying we have not received your room tax return, and we have not received your payment. But we were extended to them the same privilege. If they would send back the return and payment by June 10th, we would waive any and all penalties and interest up to that point. If they didn't pay at that point in time, we would not be deferring any interest or penalties. So we're just kind of playing it by ear at this point. It's a stricter enactment of the actual law, as you instructed us to do last time. I appreciate Jason and Jonathan putting the wording together for that and letting it go out. My staff is handling the mail as it comes in. You'll notice, as I mentioned before, that we are accepting mail. We are accepting a lot of payments come through to the new mail, the little mailbox that's on the outside of the building, the lockbox that we had installed outside. So we check that a number of times a day, and that's effective both day and night for customers. Of course, they can pay online, and we do have some traffic in the building, even though it's still locked. And you'll notice that the signs say, and our website says, by appointment only. If we get really, really busy, we have it structured in a way we could only see 16 people a day. But we haven't seen anywhere near that volume. Usually it's 3 people a day or less. So that's pretty much an update on the room tax environment, and we hope that follows fairly closely what your instructions were last time we met.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Henry?
So Jonathan, your letter has not motivated anybody to pay yet.
Are you asking or?
I don't
know that. I don't know that. I just write the letter, they get the money.
No, I mean, Rick, no one's paid yet.
But I don't know that. I mean, I don't shadow over there what's going on a daily. We'll report back to you in a month how many did and how many did not. I would imagine we'll get some, and maybe we'll get partial payments. We did say if they had questions or if they needed to discuss it with anybody, that they should contact us with a telephone number. I haven't been referred any calls yet. So I would imagine Lisa Schott has taken some. If she had issues with any customers, she would normally bring them to me, and I haven't had any. So we're still in that period of time. I can't tell you anything positive or negative, whether any more have paid or not.
And when is the next payment due?
See, we go through January, March, end of April, July. End of July is the next period of time in which they that would be sending in returns. So again, I doubt if you're going to see a lot of real positive recovery economically with some of these hotels, truthfully, between now and then. But all we can do is enact the law as you instructed, as accurate as we can, and we'll hope for the best.
Great.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for working on that and telling us what's going on. Any other questions for Rick? Dan?
Rick, if a member of the public or an employee needs to get contact your office, what's the gateway in? Who do they contact?
There's signs on each of the windows, on the building as you come in. And it says, if you want to see county admin, here's the number to call. If you want to see finance, here's the number to call. And then they call that number and we come down and we let them in. It's also on our website. And we ask them on our website and by phone to please set an appointment.
Okay, thank you.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Rick.
You're welcome.
I don't think Dominic is here. Unless he's in with Amy, but I don't think he is. Any committee members have anything you want to report or anything else you want to bring up? All right. Good seeing y'all. Thanks for coming and doing the work. We are adjourned. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Yep, thanks, y'all.